Split. Question number 2, David Shearer, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all his statements?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes, I stand by the statements I make, but of course I don't stand by the statements David Farrar makes.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Did he say in 2009 that New Zealand would be coming out of recession reasonably?
I apologise to the Leader of the Opposition. I couldn't hear the start of his question because of other noise around the House. I invite him to start again. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Did he say in 2009 that New Zealand would be coming out of recession reasonably aggressively by early 2010? And if so, has it come out of recession reasonably aggressively?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes, I remember making that statement. It was also part of, if you look at the overall quote, which I don't have with me, also said, look, it's subject to a lot of flux in Europe. And yes, actually, we are growing in 10 of the last 11 quarters, better than most other countries around the world.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How can his government continue to blame earthquakes, the financial crisis, when just 6 months ago Treasury forecast revenue being $1.5 billion higher than today's figures, and that it notes that this result was largely due to employment, wage growth and business profitability being weaker than expected?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the member just made an interesting comment. Is the government going to blame the global financial crisis? Well, I hate to tell the member, but New Zealand is not an island on its own. Actually, the rest of the world has been badly affected by the global financial crisis, and that's why the unemployment rate in Europe is around 11%, the unemployment in Spain is around 24%, the unemployment rate in the UK is over 8%. That's why the UK is back in recession. That is why Australia's most recently cut interest rates. Mr Speaker, I wish I could live in a world that could just ignore what's happening in the rest of the world as David Shearer wants to, but that's not the real world, Mr Speaker.
The Leader of the Opposition.
If the 18,000 new people in the labour force are looking for jobs because, as he said, the economy is coming right, then why was it that half of them couldn't find a job?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, what that shows in terms of the second highest participation rate since the Household Labour Force Survey has been in action is that people are increasingly confident they will get a job, and under a national government, rightfully so.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Does he stand by his statement, we can effect things like labour laws, and if you look at jobs creation, we have been promoting the Sky City Convention Centre, more mining and exploration, Australian companies coming back, they will create jobs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes, and let's run through it. The Sky City Convention Centre would create about 900 jobs in construction and 800 jobs working their way through it. An extension of exploration and mining activities in New Zealand would certainly create jobs, as Bathurst and others have indicated recently. The Australian companies moving to New Zealand have quite clearly, in fact, demonstrated that they are wanting to invest in New Zealand and create jobs. In fact, I had a major Australian corporation in my office just last week telling me they're going to move a substantial amount of their operations to New Zealand. They are all things that the national government is in favour of, and last night David Shearer told us what he was in favour of, and that is following Holland and Greece and spending money we don't have.
The Leader of the Opposition.
When will he admit that his government's cuts to services, a zero budget and an economic plan based on pokies, mining and low wages to attract foreign companies is in fact a sign of economic failure?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, if you grow in 10 of the last 11 quarters at a time where the rest of the world is doing incredibly poorly, I don't describe that as economic failure. Mr Speaker, these are very difficult times for New Zealanders, and this government, let's be honest, inherited an enormous mess from the previous Labor government that just left us with programs that were spiralling out of control, and thank goodness we've had the economic leadership of Bill English to guide us through these very troubled times.
Point of order, the Leader of the Opposition.
Seek leave to table more than 1,000 submissions from people who have written to the Labor website Show Us Your Cards, John, opposing the increase in pokies in the Sky City Convention Centre.
Leave is sought to table those documents. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Question number 3, Matiru Ture.